Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. Welcome to today's episode of How You're Getting Fucked. I'm your host, Louis Rossman. And today we're going to be going over something that was released by the ESA, otherwise known as the Entertainment Software Association, about the Stop Killing Games bill that was introduced in the state of California. I don't like the ESA very much. Every time you guys ask me why are game consoles excluded from this right to repair bill in this state, it's because of the ESA. The ESA always lobbies very hard to have right to repair an exemption in it for gaming consoles so that they're not covered. And I find that very annoying, especially when you consider how much the prices of gaming consoles have gone up. When I was a kid, I got a PlayStation for $100 US, and even when you consider inflation, when you look at the cost of the modern PlayStation, wow. Now, I'm going to read this to you, and I'm doing my best to read the whole thing before raging, but if I'm not able to finish the thing without raging, please do forgive me, because this is a lot of bullshit in one article. Misguided California bill would harm video game makers and players, by the ESA president and CEO, Stan Pierre Lewis. When they say that they misunderstand games, we are talking about the fucking ESA. We don't understand how games are built. Your lobbyists are the one that is saying that the game plays the console. Listen to this fucking testimony from 2020.
Carrying on, video game publishers rely upon secure media environments of the game console to protect their safeguards against sophisticated theft or piracy. To help the piracy video game software.
The piracy video game software?
To help the piracy video game software.
Do you at least read this into the mirror the night before you show up and testify in front of the committee? Or do you just write this on the bus on the way to the legislative building the same way that I did my earth science homework in 8th grade?
Software and hardware have security features that are built into them, and they're known as technical protection measures or digital locks. These locks prevent the play of any unauthorized game. Put simply, if a video game console's firmware runs a verification check on a game and it is not a legitimate copy, the video game won't play the console. The video game won't play the console.
My favorite part of this is how the lobbyist that's sitting next to her, when she says that the video game will play the console, it's like, oh yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. The video game will play the console. The piracy data, lithium-ion battery, latest security will explode. The video game plays the console. It's like, I don't understand games? Really now? How about John Carmack? He's the former CTO of Oculus, and I can quote him saying, every game should make sure they still work at some level without central server support, and user-run servers can actually save on hosting costs. Does John Carmack know more about video games and how they work than somebody who says that the video game plays the console? I think so. I think that this bill is very reasonable as it's currently written, and I think it's fair to the gaming industry. They created this problem for themselves. There was an entire community of people that were happy to make sure that games continued working after support was ended. This has existed for decades. Look at what people do with some of the old World of Warcraft servers. The problem is that that was considered hacking because the games have digital rights management and digital locks. And as I talk about with Section 1201 of the DMCA, this makes breaking a digital lock illegal, even if it's just so that you can repair or get back access to what you bought and paid for. There's a process called the triennial exemption process where people will ask for exemptions to Section 1201 so that they don't get taken to court and potentially dragged to federal prison because they've made aftermarket ink cartridges. One of the exemptions that was requested was for preservation of video games that are no longer made or sold by the manufacturer so that they could continue to be used or played. And here was what they did. They fight this every single fucking year. And here's what they did in 2024. Opponents also disagreed over the market for older video games. They claimed that there remains a substantial market for classic games, and as in past proceedings, provided examples of a vibrant and growing market for authorized versions of classic games that could be jeopardized by the broad exemption proposed here, including the classic games offered by ESA's members, such as re-releases, sales, and making the games available using subscription services. So this is funny. They're saying the quiet part out loud. You can't make the game keep working because we may be able to sell it back to you as a subscription later. They also suggested that the existence of secondary markets demonstrates that there are alternatives to circumvention, and any unwillingness to acquire works from those markets is unrelated to the prohibition on circumventing access controls. Ultimately, opponents argued that the video game class fails to contain appropriate safeguards to prevent users from further distributing or making entertainment uses of video games. They believe that enabling widespread remote access to preserve games with minimal supervision would present a serious risk to an important market. Read this line. They argued that the video game class fails to contain appropriate safeguards to prevent users from making entertainment uses of games, aka they fought against the preservation of video games because people may be having fun. You can't preserve a game that's no longer sold. Somebody may actually have fun with it. They can't do that unless they're paying us a subscription. So they're saying that it's really hard to preserve old video games, and you're putting all this burden on poor little Ubisoft and poor little Electronic Arts, while simultaneously trying to make it a criminal fucking offense that is punishable by 3 to 5 years in federal prison if the community does it. The community has been willing to do this work for decades, and you kept lobbying for that work to be criminalized. And now when somebody's asking you to do the work, you're like, well, we can't do the work. We don't have the time for that. Who would do the work? The community would have done it. But you criminalized it. Now you got to deal with the results. These are the fruits of your own bullshit coming back to bite you in the ass. And honestly, a part of me wishes this bill kind of did go back retroactively and said that every single game made on a year that you lobbied against the Section 1201 exemption for preservation of video games has to now be preserved by you. Seriously, you lobbied for it to be a criminal fucking offense for people to preserve games that you killed. Why should you not have to go back and unkill all those games? I would not say that you have to go back to every single game that you killed and have the bill apply retroactively. Having the law apply retroactively is fucked up. You know what's also fucked up? Criminalizing the act of making something you bought and paid for work again. You did that. You should have to pay the fucking consequences of it, but you likely are never going to. Immersive online video games have transformed entertainment, bringing millions of players together from around the globe. But now, proposed California law is threatening the modern gameplay experience by misunderstanding how online services work. Under Assembly Bill 1921, to Protect Our Games Act, when a game publisher decides to shut down a server-connected digital game, developers would be forced to choose between keeping it running indefinitely, rebuilding the game to work without technical support, or providing a full refund to everyone, no matter how long ago they played or how much time they spent on that particular game. Keep it running indefinitely is not in the bill. I'm going to put the text of the bill on the screen for you to read. It gives 3 options. The publisher can ship a standalone version, they can ship a patch so it runs without their servers, or a refund. They listed the scary option first. The bill lists that option never. It's not in the text of the bill. Show me where that's in the text of the bill. The legislation would apply to both new video games and existing games that are remastered or re-released. That's accurate, but that also makes sense. You don't want a publisher to dodge the law by just reselling an old title under a new SKU every single time. But when you take a look at what the law says, it also is prospective. It takes every single game that's already on the market and says we're not applying it to those games. We're only applying it going forward. The bill, authored by Assemblymember Chris Ward, intends to provide consumers with a guarantee that if they pay for access to an online game, they will keep access to that for as long as they want. But the bill shows a fundamental lack of knowledge about how games are built and maintained today. Access for as long as you want. Let's take a look at what the actual bill says. Forever is the ESA's word. This never shows up in the bill. The bill's own author says the following: walk away with either a playable version of the game or a refund once services cease. They're not saying that you need to have access to the online servers as long as you want. They're simply saying a version of the game that can be used by the purchaser independent of services controlled by the operator. Or a refund in an amount equal to the full purchase price paid for the digital game by the purchaser. Again, very clear. It does not say that you have to have access to their online servers forever, and I will put the text of the bill on the screen for anybody who doesn't want to go look this up on California's governmental website. Behind every online game is an enormous invisible infrastructure. There are large teams working to uncover bugs, push product patches, and update game content. Moderators enforce codes of conduct to facilitate positive experiences for players, and servers designed to accommodate millions of players must be maintained. So because someone may tell me to go fuck myself in a chat, you're going to... Moderators enforce codes of conduct to facilitate positive experiences. So because somebody may be able to tell me to go fuck myself in the chat, you're going to protect me from that by shutting off the game. Yeah, thanks, asshole. When a game's popularity fades, that infrastructure continues to run for a fraction of the audience at nearly the same cost. No. Digital game operator does not include a person or entity that provides general purpose hosting, cloud computing, storage, or network services. And what they're saying is not even how cloud billing works. Amazon Game Lift auto scales to 0 instances when nobody's playing. Fewer players, lower cost. And an end-of-life patch is a one-time job. It's not a forever bill. Indies have already done this. Knockout City, Gran Turismo Sport, Mega Man 10. These people are not going bankrupt by allowing you to continue playing the game after they have stopped supporting it. Additionally, many of today's popular games include licensed music, likeness rights, and branding that may be time-limited. A legal requirement to keep games playable indefinitely will put game publishers in an impossible situation where they're either renegotiating licenses in perpetuity or altering games to change the creator's original intent and gameplay experience. And again, this brings us back to the point that we are not applying this to games that already exist. We are applying this to games into the future, which means that when you are making a game in the future, you need to say, hey, Eminem, we want to use your music in this game. How much money would it cost to use this music in the game? Well, you can use the music in the game, but the game's got to die 18 months from now. Yeah, we're not really allowed to do that anymore. Oh, really? Yeah, this law says that we can't just fucking take people's games from them because Eminem doesn't want his music in the game. Okay, how about this? Just give me a cool $2 million and you can use it for whatever you want. Oh, cool. Thanks, Eminem. That's the kind of conversation that's going to happen after a law like this passes. If you're not allowed to rip the games from people, how stupid do you think people are? Were there no music in video games from 1990 to 2015? Are they just hoping that people forget that there used to be music in video games before games connected to the internet? You've had licensing agreements for music and video games from the beginning of time. This has always existed. The only reason they can even make temporary licensing agreements is because you have the ability to take the games away from people. When you didn't have the ability to take a game away from somebody, when game consoles and video games did not connect to the internet, you didn't have to worry about this. And even when games did connect to the internet, before it was part of our culture to just turn games off, licensing agreements existed that respected the concept of ownership. The proposal essentially keeps games alive long after their natural life cycle, draining resources and energy from creating what comes next. Every dollar spent on outdated systems is a dollar not spent on building a new one. Maintaining legacy systems is inefficient and expensive, and those costs get passed on to customers. They're not. The entire point of this is make the game in a manner where you don't have to maintain it. Nobody's asking you to maintain the server forever. That's not what people are asking for. That's not in the bill. If every game becomes a permanent obligation, companies will make fewer of them, especially the ambitious online worlds that today's players love most. AB 1921 bill creates an entirely new, unprecedented category of consumer products. We don't expect innovators to continue supporting their very first car model, their original smartphone, or an outdated operating system software, but this bill suggests that online video games should last forever. This comes at a great expense to the original creators and is in direct conflict with the basic principles of America's long-standing copyright laws. That's a lot of gaslighting right there. So remember the video I was doing yesterday where I was ranting about the arguments made for the DMCA? When they released the DMCA, they wanted there to be propaganda in kids' classrooms. They wanted bypassing a digital lock to be compared to stealing a pencil, a ball, a jacket, or a pen. And one of the things that I said is that your pen doesn't stop working because you stop paying a subscription. Your pen can't be turned off by the manufacturer. My basketball can't be disabled by the manufacturer. My jacket doesn't tell me that if I want to wear it in sub 20-degree weather, I have to pay for a higher tier of subscription, or I have to purchase a new jacket because my old one is no longer supported. And the same thing is going on here. When they're talking about not supporting a very first car model or an original smartphone, they are conflating ending support with revoking functionality. So if you have a Toyota Corolla from 1989, Toyota may not support that vehicle anymore, but you can still drive it, you can still fix it, you could still work on it. There are many Toyotas from the 1980s that are still working today. Simply because the manufacturer no longer supports it does not mean that you can no longer use it. This is the sleight of hand that Bruce Lehman started making in 1994 that I talked about in yesterday's video, which I highly suggest you watch, that is now poisoning our society 32 years later. A server-killed game is a brick. Nobody's asking Ford or Toyota to service a car from 1989. We're simply asking them to not disable the engines by remote signal. AB 1921 creates an entirely new, unprecedented category of consumer product. Bricking by server is not new. The AB 1921 is not creating an entirely new, unprecedented category of consumer products. We talked about another bill that got passed in California. To be clear, it's not actually enforced. It's not, in my opinion, it's kind of a joke because of how they're actually enforcing it. But there is a bill in California that literally deals with this, where there are things that get sold as a purchase when in reality it is something that the manufacturer could take away from you. And because this is so common, whether we're talking about Revolve Hub, Insteon, Spotify, Car Things, Sonos, there are so many things that get sold as a purchase, but then the manufacturer has the ability to take it away from you, that California has literally passed legislation saying you can't sell something and use words like purchase, sell, or sold if you have the ability to take it back from the customer. This is not a new, unprecedented category of consumer products. The enshittification of gaming follows many other fucking product lines. This bill may sound consumer-friendly, but it ultimately hurts both players and creators. Many games today are live, connected experiences that depend on online communities and evolving content, not to mention that nearly 2/3 of video game software companies in the U.S. operate with less than 10 employees. You cannot demand forever from video game developers without hampering their ability to create new games that provide the kinds of experiences that players love and have come to expect. AB 1921 doesn't just misunderstand games, it undermines the very thing they claim to protect. So when they say that nearly 2/3 of video game software companies in the US operate with less than 10 employees, the number is not false, but they're describing the wrong companies. The companies that are making games that get killed are Electronic Arts, Sony, Ubisoft. They're not 10-person game shops. For the most part, the companies that are pulling this type of shit, where they sell you a game, and it's a sale, it's a purchase, it was sold to you, and then it stops working, these are not 10-person game companies. They are using the little mom-and-pop video game developer as a shield to protect Sony and Ubisoft and Electronic Arts and all these other companies from doing this type of fucked up shit. Here's what I'm going to ask of the audience. I know a lot of people are going to be pissed off at this in the comments. I don't give a fuck. The costs are too high if we get this wrong. In my experience, people that play games a lot and care about this don't often leave their house. When I got Warcraft 2 and I started playing that shit, I don't think I left my house for a week on summer vacation, 1997, 1998. I was playing that game all day. The people that I know that love video games a lot, they can get really sucked into them. The problem is that you can't just send one email in this case. It's not enough. You can't just make one phone call. You're going to have to actually show up at your state senator or state assembly person's office and explain why this is bullshit. I mean it. You need to have a line of people organized outside of their office on a regular basis. You need to physically show up. You need to call them. You need to email them, not just once, not just twice. You need to not call them just once or twice, but over and over again to let them know that the ESA is full of shit and that you're not having it anymore. And that if they do not support this piece of legislation, that you are going to vote for the... And that if they don't support this piece of legislation, that you're going to vote for somebody else. They need to feel it. Because the ESA, sadly, as dumb as they are, as gaslighting as they are, as they say things like, you don't understand how games are built, and then send lobbyists into the Washington State Senate saying, the game plays the console. They often win. They have a lot of money, and they often win. But the thing is, we can outnumber them. And if we outnumber them, we win. Make sure that we win, not the people that think it should be a fucking crime to make old video games work. Because if you make old video games work, then, well, we may not be able to sell it back to you as a subscription. They literally put that shit in plain text, man. The ESA has defeated us before. The ESA is not going to defeat us again. Never again. No. This channel is bigger. More people are informed on the issue. More people are galvanized on the issue. And hopefully I'm better at explaining it. You will see a link down below that goes over a very detailed rebuttal of every single one of the points that's made in this article. If you'd like to read it, if you would like to make that article better, anybody can edit the article. It is on open to the public wiki. You don't even have to log in or register in order to make edits to the article. And I hope to see this very well maintained. We need to make sure that these points are pushed back against and called out for the bullshit they are the moment that they come out. Section 12.1 of the DMCA, we're going to win on that. This, we're going to win on this. We're going to win. Seriously. Don't give me that look. Don't give me that fucking look. You're going to leave your house. You're going to email your state senator and assembly person. You're going to call them. And we are going to win. You're not going to ask me in the comments, Louis, what is a state senator? Louis, how do I send an email? Louis, I don't know where my phone is. No. If you're able to watch this video, somehow you figured out how to get on the internet. You know how to form a sentence. You know how to send an email. You know how to make a phone call. You know how to Google my zip code, who is my senator or assembly person. Don't write in the comments, Louis, what do I say? Say you hate video games and you think that they should be subscriptions. What do you want from me? You know what the fuck to say. Get involved. Do it now. Or else these people win. And we're not going to let them win anymore. They've won in the past, but never again. Never again. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. See you in the next video. Bye now. Oh, wow. I scared the shit out of Blackberry right there. Let's give her a little pet. That's my berry. Ow. That is a scratchy tongue. Jesus Christ, that is a scratchy tongue. What are you doing to me? Why are you doing this? What did I do to you to deserve having my skin ripped off? My arm is going to look like Mosenrath's hand. Ow.
We also have the duty not to infringe the IP rights in the process. It is in fact the manufacturers who have the relevant rights, not consumers.